So yesterday there was an article put out by Moneyweb by one of our journalists around the construction sector and the employment equity battle that rages within there. Obviously there's been a lot that's been said over the last couple of weeks and months around the amendments to the Employment Equity Act and how those amendments affect different industries and different sectors. I'm joined by Chris Campbell, CEO of CESA, to discuss the recent amendments and how they affect the construction space. The starting point for this is obviously, what do these new amendments mean for the construction sector with regards to employment equity?
Firstly, I would like to categorically state that from a organizational perspective, which is my organization being Consulting Engineers South Africa, have fully embraced the need for ongoing journey of transformation to work away the legacy that exists in our various industries, and construction, engineering not being similar. But the unfortunate reality is, whereas legislation such as employment equity are necessary, because unfortunately too, again, companies have not played their part in all respects to look at what should a new South Africa look like. But I think it's most important when we look at the employment equity, and currently the way the system worked before this amendment bill was that there was an opportunity for companies, based on their realities, set targets, be held to them, and be accountable for them. The amendment of the Employment Equity Act now is looking at setting targets for entire industries. Now, that is a complex issue, simply because it presupposes that there's elements of uniformity across these industries. We talk about sector targets for construction, for example, and there have been engagements. My organization, through an aligned entity, Construction Alliance South Africa, have been intimately involved and engaged with the Department of Employment and Labour, even through Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, where it became apparent that the interpretation of the sector and the employment equity target setting, they're not quite as homogeneous as people are assuming. Why am I saying that? If you go to the Department of Employment and Labour, the category in which construction falls is specific to contractors. Those are the companies who physically build the infrastructure that we see and we live with. The engineering practitioners in consulting engineering, designers and planners as professions, that sits in a completely different category. The professions category under the department includes engineers, accountants, veterinary scientists, legal practitioners. That's such a mixed family of professions that to try to hazard a guess on what would be reasonable and rational targets to set and to hold those professions and companies who fall in that area, it renders the whole argument moot. I am aware that parties to that had made proposals to the department to have subsectors, and then we work on what would be not conservative, but reasonable and rational, with the objective of transformation in mind. And the appetite for that from the department was non-existent.
So, Chris, we're saying that a blanket approach, first of all, is not the way to go. And when CESA then went about engaging with the Department of Employment and Labour, there was not really much of a response from their perspective. I guess the question then becomes, where to from here? Is there still the ability to have the targets revised? Is it something where each sector just simply has to comply and we move forward? What are the next steps then?
We shouldn't be trying to resolve these issues through the courts, which is eventually what's going to happen. Not my organization, but between the department and the various companies or even other entities. We should rather be looking at how do we come up with a sensible way of embarking on this journey. And I think what's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about is this a deliberate strategy, anti-transformation? And the answer is no. There may be pockets of that, but not generally. The elephant in the room is the systemic issues around the basic education that we are affording our youth, and whether 30% is going to set you up to aspire to a career as an engineer, as an accountant, all of the above. And so right now we are looking at what is the picture now. But if we don't fix that root cause, then certainly 20 years from now, the picture is not going to change. And you cannot hold industry accountable for that alone.
So we're saying address the employment equity issues from a foundational level rather than waiting to address them at current level that we're doing. Thanks so much, Chris. That was Chris Campbell, who's the CEO of Consulting Engineers of South Africa, just commenting on the latest Employment Equity Amendment Act.
Moneyweb at Midday. For all your up